The dying light of Valsiana's twin suns cast long, blood-red shadows across the endless rust dunes. Rhea Kincaid's dune skiff rattled over jagged sandstone outcrops, its engines coughing grit with each jolt. She leaned forward, peering through, the smudged goggles perched on her freckled nose, as though her keen eyes alone could part the desert haze and reveal the secrets buried within. Behind her, the skiff's cargo hold creaked under the weight of excavation tools, spare parts, and her prized leather-bound notebook, filled with half-baked theories, star charts, and snarky doodles mocking the so-called professional archaeologists who'd dismissed her theories as childish fantasies. Valsiana was supposed to be a dead world, its shallow seas long since boiled away, its once opulent cities swallowed by drifting sands. Officially, the planet was little more than a waypoint on smuggler routes, its resources exhausted centuries ago. But buried deep in pirate logs and forbidden data caches, Rhea had found tantalizing fragments of a legend, an ancient alien sentinel buried beneath Valsiana's surface, waiting to be awoken after millennia of slumber. As the skiff ascended a towering dune, Rhea's heart pounded. She switched on the gravimetric scanner, its soft green glow illuminating her anxious features. The needle quivered, then shot northward. She felt a momentary thrill, like discovering a hidden level in her favorite holo RPG. "Almost home," she whispered, adjusting her backpack so the toolkit didn't press uncomfortably against her spine. A gust of wind swept past, scattering burnt orange sand into dancing eddies. She cracked her fingers, which were stained with years of solder and ink, and hopped down from the skiff. The ground trembled. A low, mournful groan rippled through the valley beneath her boots. Rhea halted mid-step, eyes wide. The vibration rose, reverberating up her legs, as though Valsiana itself were startled awake. Behind her, the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, setting the sky aflame. There it was, half buried in the shifting dunes, the colossal leg of a creature so vast it defied belief. Metallic plating, pitted and scored by ancient storms, arced upward from the sand, a paw the size of a mountain capped with curved talons that glittered like frozen sunlight. Lines of strange, glowing script traced across its surface, glowing, faintly as dusk approached. Rhea's voice caught in her throat. She'd studied thousands of images of similar legends, sonic guardians, star-weaving titans, sentinels of forgotten races, but nothing prepared her for seeing one in the flesh. The ground groaned again, louder this time, as though the creature's distant heart was stirring. With trembling hands, Rhea set down her tool bag and flipped open her notebook. She sketched quickly, a habit for translating sudden inspiration into concrete form. Substrate, unknown adamantine alloy, she muttered. Inscriptions pre-Xylaxian runes. A shard of excitement cracked her voice. If she could decipher those runes, she might unlock millennia of lost history. But there was something else, flickering between the talons, an unnatural, green light pulsing like a heartbeat. Rhea inched closer, squinting through the goggles. Embedded in the metallic joint was a slender spike, its surface veined with luminescent energy. The Colossus groaned again, this time with unmistakable pain. Instinct overrode caution. She dropped to her knees, careful not to let the swirling sands betray her approach. Sensors clipped to her belt provided real-time readings. Seismic tremors, magnetic flux, and energy spikes so intense they made her comms unit hiss. She flicked on a wrist-mounted lamp, the pure white beam cutting through the gloom. The spike was about a cubit long, tapering to a wicked point at one end. It shimmered, alive with raw power. Rhea's stomach twisted with equal parts awe and dread. The legend spoke of these thorns. They were called keys of sorrow, left behind by starforgers to both bind and heal colossal constructs. Remove one erroneously, and catastrophe could follow. Leave it, and the guardian would die in agony, its systems corroding from within. Dust devils danced around her as the sun sank completely, leaving a bruised purple twilight. Alone before this ancient giant, Rhea took a breath that tasted of ozone and destiny. She activated her micro-drill, its whirring tip meant for delicate extractions, and brushed aside grains of sand guarding the spike's base. The Colossus groaned. Again, deeper, more urgent, its resonant frequencies rattling her bones. Her toolkit lay open at her side. Scalpels, forceps, magnetic clamp, plasma-sealed containment pod. Each instrument gleamed dully in the lamp's glare. She paused, hand hovering over the clamp's trigger. A single wrong move, and who knew what might happen? Yet for every voice in her mind urging retreat, another whispered, "You've come this far. You can do it." She wrapped her gloved fingers around the clamp handle and snapped it shut around the spike. The metal sang, vibrating against the clamp's grips. Rhea felt her pulse hammering in tune with the Colossus's groans. She pressed her feet into the sand, braced herself against the wind and pulled. A blinding pulse of light erupted from the point where clamp met spike, and the beast cried out in a soundless roar that shook the very air. Rhea staggered back, disbelief and triumph warring across her face. The spike slid free, hovering for an instant before clattering into the sand. Silence. Then a whisper of movement. Through the swirling dust, the Colossus shifted, buffeted by invisible currents of energy. Its colossal paw flexed, talons digging shallow trenches in the sand. Rhea blinked, her lamp flickering as the creature's eyes, brilliant orbs made of prismatic facets, fared to life, bathing the desert in pale crystalline light. She swallowed hard. Whatever had begun tonight was far from over. But as the groans subsided into gentle hums, Rhea realized she'd just rewritten the fate of an entire galaxy. And she, a self-proclaimed nerd in a ratty hoodie, was at the very center of it all. With the spike at her feet and her heart echoing the Colossus's slow, steady breaths, she made a silent promise. Tonight, she would learn its secrets or die trying. And somewhere beyond the dunes, unseen eyes had begun to watch. The Colossus's heartbeat echoed through the dunes like the tolling of a cathedral bell. Rhea staggered back as the ground underfoot rippled in concentric waves. Her goggles glowed softly, converting the creature's low-frequency groans into jagged spikes on her audio readout. She swallowed hard, every nerve in her body alive with equal measures of exhilaration and fear. Behind her, the sky roiled with violet clouds as if Valsiana itself were charged by the alien energies now coursing through its buried champion. The twin moons, long vanished into the day of ash according to legend, flickered into view, luminous, rings appearing around each as they cut through the newly energized atmosphere. "Rhea!" crackled her wrist comms. Jeeves' voice trembled with excitement. "I'm picking up massive gravitational anomalies. It's like the Colossus is rebooting its core. Its power signature is off the charts." She pressed a finger to her earpiece. "I see it, Jeeves. The runes are glowing, every one of them. This isn't just healing. It's an activation sequence." Her words weren't idle speculation. Jagged scripts traced themselves in luminescent arcs across the Colossus's plating, pulsing in sequence, from the talons up its colossal limb, across segmented armor, and toward a cavernous chamber that lay partly buried at the base of what must be its shoulder. Rhea's scanner lit up like a festive sky. With a sudden whoosh, jets of turquoise light poured from fissures in the sand around the paw, arcing upward into the cavern and vanishing inside. The Colossus tensed, its plated fingers flexing, tiny motes of sand dancing through the gaps. A sound, an actual sound resonant with unheard melodies emerged and the air itself shimmered. "Jeeves," she whispered, entranced. That's its voice, it's singing." A burst of static crackled through her comms. "Can you record it? This is groundbreaking." Rhea shook her head. "No time." She swiveled on her heel and sprinted back to her skiff, retrieving a stowed gravitic harpoon and a coil of nanofiber cable. If the Colossus was indeed singing, its melody might be a harmonic key to something even greater, and if she could tether herself to that resonance, she might glimpse the creature's memory banks, its creation, its purpose. Her boots sank into the glowing fissure, Electricity danced across the grains of sand crackling underfoot. Still, she pressed on, heart madly drumming. The Colossus's song rose and fell in a majestic crescendo. Each note resonated through her body, awakening long-forgotten synapses in her brain. Reaching the cavern mouth, Rhea paused to catch her breath. The interior was a cathedral of metal and light, vaulted ceilings of mica-like crystal, walls inscribed with galactic cartography, and in the center a pulsating energy core that looked almost organic, veins of liquid light coursing through transparent conduits. The Colossus's voice emanated from this core, a blend of mechanical hum and ethereal chant. She loaded the harpoon and fired. The titanium-tipped spear embedded itself in a crystalline pillar beside the core. Rhea yanked on the cable until the pillar cracked, sending a cascade of luminescent sap pooling around her ankles. The Colossus's voice trembled, a mournful dip, then a defiant surge. Somewhere above she heard metal grinding as the Guardian shifted to face her. She wrapped the cable around her arm and placed her palm on the core's surface. The energy pulsed through her, gloves warm and urgent. Images flared behind her closed eyelids, a world alive with floating citadels, star forges churning cosmic metals, and an assembly of towering beings, star forgers, each guiding the creation of colossal guardians like this one. She saw the forging ritual, the binding of celestial energies, and the moment the keys of sorrow were thrust into their paws to ensure loyalty and eternal suffering should they rebel. Her breath caught. The spike she'd removed was not merely a binding key, but a curse designed to sap the Colossus's purpose, to punish it for some ancient transgression. And now, with that key gone, the truth of its origin and the guilt of its makers would be revealed across the galaxy. Above, the Colossus groaned louder, shaking the cavern's crystalline vaults. The cable snapped taut and Rhea stumbled backward, sliding across the energy-slick floor. She pried her hand loose as a geyser of turquoise light erupted from the crack where her harpoon had struck. The cavern flooded with luminescence, and for a moment she felt herself adrift in starlight. Then the cavern fell silent. When Rhea dared look up, the energy core had dimmed to a steady pulse, strong but controlled. The Colossus's massive form, now illuminated from within, descended from its half-buried throne. Its eyes, like twin quasars, focused on her. In that gaze was gratitude and something deeper, a plea. Jeeves' voice cut through her awestruck trance. Rhea, war fleets are arriving on sensors. They're here for the power. This is their kill switch. She met the Colossus's gaze and, without words, promised allegiance. Turning to the cavern's exit, she shouted into her comms, "Jeeve, plot an escape corridor. I need time to bond with it. Time to understand how to defend us both." As the Colossus's groans of awakening faded into measured hums, Rhea dashed into the violet twilight, the desert winds swirling around her like a chorus of spectral witnesses. Somewhere beyond, the marauders were closing in, but she was no longer merely a curious nerd. She was the bearer of an ancient truth, and the galaxy's hope rode on her next daring move. A tremor ran through Valciana's crimson sands as the fissures formed around the Colossus's massive paw, widened like alligator jaws. Rhea scrambled back, heart hammering, as turquoise light gushed up through the cracks in shimmering rivulets. They pooled at her feet, writhing like living serpents before coursing into the colossal construct's veins of alloy and crystal. The creature's groans deepened into a keening wail, as though every molecule of its body was being rewritten. Rhea's goggles fogged with the heat rising from the energic flow. She pressed a hand to her chest, fighting nausea. Above her, the paw flexed, talons rasping against one another, shedding ancient rust and sand. Each shift sent cascades of liquid light surging upward, feeding into the Colossus's shoulder joint. The runes that lined its plates blazed in sequence, first the spirals of memory, then the glyphs of power, and finally, the sigils of purpose. "Jeeve," she cried into her comms, voice trembling. "It's healing, but it's in agony." On the orbital monitor, Jeeves' disembodied voice reported frantic readings. "Thermodynamics are off the charts. Its internal temperature is spiking. If that core goes supercritical, it'll explode like a neutron star collapse. Rhea's breath caught. She had freed the key of sorrow, but she'd unwittingly triggered a rebound. The Colossus's systems were rebooting, and its pain was tearing it apart from the inside. The liquid light, once dormant, was now purging corruption, but at the cost of near unstoppable feedback loops. She dropped to one knee and yanked a data pad from her belt, fingers flying across holokeys. The schematics she'd sketched in the cavern's cathedral, combined with ancient Starforger legends, gave her a rough map of the creature's energy conduits. She located the central vent valve at the base of the shoulder joint, the only relief point that could bleed off excess energy without triggering a cascade failure. "Jeeve, send down the micro-relief manifold," she ordered, voice tight. "I need those nanovalves calibrated for supercritical loads." "On it," came the reply, and a moment later, a small drone drifted down, dropping the manifold into her waiting hands. Its sensors trembled as they registered the Colossus's throes. Rhea raced forward. The manifold's cable snaked around her arm like a lifeline. She clamped it to an access port hidden beneath a flake of broken armor. The drone's manipulators whirred, twisting nanoscrews and embedding microscopic pressure regulators. All around her, the ground shivered in time with the Colossus's heartbeat. With a hiss, the manifold engaged. A thin stream of liquid light diverted away from the limb's main conduit, siphoned through the nanovalves and safely deposited into a containment reservoir. The creature's wail subsided into ragged breaths. The faucets of turquoise energy slowed to a gentle pulse, and the fissures around the paw closed seam by glowing seam. Rhea exhaled, relief washing through her. Sweat stung her eyes, and her voice was raw when she spoke into the comms. "It's stable. For now." But stability came at a price. The Colossus's eyes, those multifaceted orbs of brilliance, flickered open, focusing on Rhea with something that transcended thought. Grief, gratitude, and a sorrow too vast for words. It raised its gargantuan hand and, with delicate precision, plucked away the last of the runic residues that had bound it in chains of suffering. Before Rhea could react, seismic sensors screamed. From the western horizon, a black armada emerged, warships bristling with turbolasers and ionic disruptors. The Marauder Coalition had arrived. Their flagship's banner, a red skull bisected by twin lightning bolts, fluttered in the dying wind. Jeeves' voice whispered, nearly drowned by the Colossus's low rumble. "They're here to kill it, Rhea. They think if they take its core intact, they can harvest Starforger tech." Rhea's stomach nodded. She looked up at the towering Guardian, its renewed energy humming in its veins, but its great form still tethered by centuries of pain. The whispered legends echoed in her mind. Guardians awakened were nearly unstoppable, but only if guided by a voice of true intent. She tapped her comms. "Jeeve, patch me into the Colossus's neural resonance link. I need to try something." Her fingers flew over the manifold's controls, redirecting part of its interface to her wrist comm unit. A moment later, a new frequency hummed in her ear, a subsonic channel only the Colossus could perceive. She pressed her palm to the manifold's access port, feeling a gentle thrum. It was a heartbeat, a steady thud that matched her own pulse. "Listen to me," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "You survived your own makers. You survived the key of sorrow. Now stand with me. Stand for freedom. Stand for life." The Colossus's breath vibrated through the ground. Dust rose in lazy spirals as its plate-covered chest expanded and contracted. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Only the distant hiss of Marauder fighters preparing to dive bomb. Then, from deep within the Guardian's core, a resonant hum swelled, answering her call. The runes along its plating shifted from mourning, blue to defiant white, and energy flared in arcs across its shoulder joint. With a single earth-shaking groan of resolve, the Colossus rose to its full, awe-inspiring height. Towering over the battlefield, shielded by a dome of shimmering aurora-like energy. Rhea staggered back, awestruck. Above, Marauder fighters faltered, as their ion cannons discharged harmlessly against the crackling shield. She raised her voice, filling the subsonic channel and the thin atmosphere alike. For Valsiana, for every world they've crushed. The Colossus responded with a thunderous roar that rattled mountains, and Rhea knew in that moment of transcendent unity that they would not go quietly into the night. The galaxy's fate would be decided here, between an awakened Titan and the Ravagers who sought to enslave its power, and Rhea stood at the heart of it all, a small figure lit by the glow of ancient hope. Crimson dusk deepened into an ink-black sky as the Marauder Coalition's warfleets closed in, dreadnoughts bristling with ion cannons lining up beyond the horizon. Rhea stood atop a jagged plateau of obsidian glass. Once the spire of a fallen city, her equipment jangled at her belt, a sonic amplifier she'd jury-rigged from a starport PA speaker, her gravimetric harpoon slung over one shoulder, and a satchel of fusion cell batteries. The Colossus knelt beside her, its great forearm raised to shield her from incoming tracer fire, each blast ricocheting harmlessly off its energy shield. "Jeeve, I need coordinates for the Coalition flagship's comm array," she hissed into her wrist comm. "If I can target their central uplink with a feedback pulse, I might buy us some breathing room." Static crackled in response. Jeeve's orbital relay was under fire, the signal sputtering. "Do it," she snapped, planting her feet firmly. The Colossus's shield flared as a barrage of missiles streaked toward them, vaporizing in shards of light. With trembling hands, Rhea mounted the sonic amp onto a reinforced tripod. She slid a fusion cell into the back and checked the directional focus. An array of parabolic reflectors honed to project her voice across kilometers of vacuum. The device whined to life, and she felt its power humming through her bones. Above, the Colossus's great head swiveled to lock onto the enemy fleet, its internal resonators poised to translate sonic vibrations into protective harmonics. A squadron of Marauder fighters dove in low, strafing runs aimed at Rhea's position. She dodged behind a fractured column of alien masonry as tracer beams sliced the air. "Now or never," she muttered, adjusting the amp's gain controls until its needle hovered in the red. She shut her eyes, took a deep breath that tasted foul with ozone, and launched into a blood-curdling scream. Her voice raw with adrenaline and defiance. The amplifier magnified her scream into a shockwave of sound, cascading over the dunes in expanding rings. The Colossus's shield pulsed in time with the sonic oscillations growing brighter, denser, until it rippled outward like a living membrane. Marauder fighters caught in its path were tossed aside, their hulls collapsing inward, like paper. Ion cannons sputtered and died, distant turrets shattered under the feedback. Even the flagship's comm array faltered, its channels garbling into static. Rhea's scream wavered, and she replaced it with a rallying cry. "For Valsiana, for the Guardians, for every world you've enslaved." The amplifier's speakers crackled with raw energy, and the Colossus answered in kind. Deep within its core, resonant chords joined her human song, metallic harmonics that intertwined with her voice, creating a symphony of resistance. The ground beneath them quaked, and a lattice of auroral filaments descended from the Colossus's shoulder, snaking across the battlefield to anchor itself in the sand. Each filament acted like a lightning rod, drawing in stray ion currents and neutralizing them before they could strike. Marauder soldiers deployed on foot to board the Guardian found themselves immobilized as the filaments reached out like pale fingers, disrupting their energy suits. Rhea sprinted forward, firing her harpoon into the flagship's defunct uplink tower. Sparks flew as the cable arced between conduit and hull, shorting its power grid, and with a final resonant chord from the Colossus, the Marauder fleet's command network collapsed. Silence swallowed the battlefield. The only sound was Rhea's heavy breathing and the Colossus's steady hum as it powered down its defensive lattice. Across the dunes, warships drifted powerless. Boarding ramps hung uselessly in mid-descent. In that moment of stillness, Rhea realized her scream had not only saved them, it had reawakened the Guardian's true purpose as protector of the weak and vanquisher of oppressors. She lowered the sonic amp and turned to the Colossus, whose crystalline eyes glowed softly in approval. Raising one immense finger, it tapped her shoulder lightly, an unmistakable gesture of gratitude. Rhea's lips curved into a weary smile. Together they had turned the tide. A lone nerd teen and an ancient titan, united by a scream that shook the stars and heralded the end of an empire built on fear. The galaxy would never be the same. Dawn's first pale tendrils crept across Valsiana's scarred horizon, painting the sands in soft gold. The Colossus stood at the edge of a newly healed canyon, its gargantuan form outlined against the twin sun's gentle glow. Rhea Kincaid, her clothes singed and her chest still buzzing with residual echoes of the sonic amplifier, gazed upon a transformed world. In the distance, the shattered hulls of the Marauder Coalition lay silent. Their crews either fled or surrendered to the vast desert. Jeeves' voice crackled over the comm, brimming with awe. "Rhea, you did it. Galactic Command just hailed me. Word's already spreading that the Coalition flagship went down without a shot. Your scream, the Guardian's defense, it's legendary." She smiled, though fatigue tugged at her bones. "Let them know Valsiana isn't a backwater. We're back, and we're not alone." Together, Rhea and the Colossus descended into the canyon floor. Where once the Key of Sorrow had bounded in agony, the ground now pulsed with healing light. Crystal-clear streams bubbled from newly formed springs, nourished by the Guardian's reactivated terraforming arrays. Stunted flora, pale ferns, and luminescent moss sprouted wherever its feet had pressed, transforming the barren sands into fertile ground. Curious native species emerged from hiding, small insectoid creatures with translucent wings, and slender lizard-like grazers whose scales shimmered like opals. They approached the Colossus without fear, nuzzling its massive toes as if greeting an old friend. Rhea knelt beside a burgeoning pool of water, scooping a handful into her palm. It was cool and pure, an elixir born of ancient technology and her own daring. As the twin suns climbed, a convoy of Galcom envoys and reformed Marauder diplomats arrived, their dust-caked uniforms replaced by curious smiles. They formed a circle around Rhea, and the Colossus's outstretched hand bowed in silent reverence. The ambassador of the Outer Rim Federation, a silver-scaled diplomat, stepped forward. "Teenager," she said, her translation unit rendering nerd teen into the equivalent of brilliant visionary in her native tongue. "You have awakened more than a guardian. You have ignited hope across the stars." Rhea rose, brushing sand from her jeans. She met the ambassador's gaze. "Hope was always there," she replied. "It just needed a voice." At her signal, the Colossus unfurled its crystalline wings, vast panels of refracted light, and released a harmonic pulse that resonated with every ship and station within light hours. Across comm channels and comm relays, its melody carried a simple message: balance, protect, unite. Across the galaxy, dormant guardians blinked awake. Planetary shields faltered and fell, freeing oppressed worlds. War machines powered, down mid-battle. On distant outposts, miners laid down their drills. On besieged cities, residents poured into streets in joyous celebration. The Coalition's remnants surrendered en masse, pledging allegiance to a new council of guardians and worlds. Days later, on a rebuilt platform hovering above Valsiana's rejuvenated desert, Rhea addressed a gathering of representatives from hundreds of worlds. Mounting the dais, she paused to glance skyward, where the Colossus floated sentinel, wings outstretched like a promise. "Today," she began, voice steady, "we choose cooperation over conquest, restoration over ruin. We learned that true power lies not in domination, but in the courage to stand for others. May our unity be the legacy of this day, and may every guardian, awakened or yet sleeping, know that they are never alone." A chorus of applause, human and alien alike, echoed beneath the twin suns. Behind her, the Colossus's multifaceted eyes glinted in satisfaction. Together they had mended a world and set a galaxy on the path to rebirth. And somewhere, in the silent expanse beyond known space, Other colossi listened and stirred in answer to the promise of a new dawn.